Hello, everyone. Great to see you today. I'm Dan Pierce, one of the founders of Mentally Fit. And today we are back with another live talk here in the Therapist Toolbox. We are joined by Alex Boianghu, a licensed professional counselor, who's here today to talk about meditation and somatic therapy in treating trauma. With that said, let's jump right in. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today.
Dan, thank you so much. And this is an honor to be here and with fellow practitioners, therapists together. So I'd like to begin by inviting everyone who is live to just take a moment here together and close your eyes for a minute and take full deep breaths down into the belly and letting the breath out naturally, even in and even out through the nose. Your eyes closed, you can feel the breath moving deeply into the body. On the exhale, releasing tension, letting go of what's happened, what's going to happen, letting go into the present moment, being here together, sharing this time. And now take that breath and extend it all the way down into your feet. Bring the breath to make contact with your feet. Experience the aliveness in your feet, making contact with the earth. Feel that you're actually breathing in and out of your feet. By making this kind of deep contact within the body, we begin the healing process. Breathe into your legs, up to your knees and into your knees. Feel that breath opening up the spaces in the body. If you're noticing any contractions, tightness within the body, use the breath to release it. Feel the breath coming all the way up through your entire legs. Your legs are now breathing, and your attention is within the body, within both of your legs simultaneously. You can feel that there's a quality of knowing and a presence wherever you bring the breath. And now breathe into your whole body, including your belly, your torso, your neck, your head, all the way through your arms. Your whole body is breathing. Feel that with every breath in, a sense of aliveness and a fullness, a well-being wells up in the body. And with the exhale, a releasing. And with every release, there's a little bit more relaxation. With every release, there's a little bit more vitality and wholeness. You can open your eyes now at this point. And welcome. Today we'll be talking about meditation and somatic healing practices related to trauma. Those are three very big words that I want to be able to discuss with you today. And I want to take trauma as the first word, because by understanding trauma, we then can see how meditation and how somatic practices work with healing trauma. We have really progressed a long way in the last 100 years in the field of psychology, beginning with Freud's work all the way up to the modern psychology pioneers. And with the advent of technology and our understanding of the brain, we really are peering into the depths of what causes trauma, the impacts of trauma, and also the practices that are effectively working with trauma today. We're very fortunate in the last 40, 50 years, the progress has been exponential. We could look at the work of Wilhelm Reich when he was talking about the impact of body armoring. He was studying the impact of how people's traumas were creating patterns in the body. And these patterns became armor. And he was exploring and how this character armor also showed up in the body. So we see that there was a beginning of the integration of the body, mind, and spirit happening in the 60s that wasn't there yet before that time. And as we started to understand the impact on the body and what's happening in the body, in the brain, we saw that trauma from birth, actually in utero, creates a separation from our own fullness, wholeness. The Greek word for trauma is trauma, and the translation for that is a rupture. So trauma, and we need to understand what that word means. There's been discussion in the field that everybody in the human condition experiences trauma. Nobody gets away from being in the human realm without having some kind of impact by their early on environment on the body, on the mind, on the spirit, that in some way moves us away from our natural expression of who we are and how we want to be in the world. So you often hear what we call small t and big T, big trauma, small trauma. But I want you to think about this not as they're discrete. I want you to think about trauma as a spectrum, from the most violent traumas, either one incident or ongoing repeated incidents of trauma, to the child whose mother is busy working and can't attend to that child for a few moments, and in that particular child, in that particular moment, creates a sense of contraction. So we can say that all of us alive, experience the fundamental rupture of our true nature. So therefore, the work that I do with people, the work that we do with people, is helping them heal those wounds, those trauma wounds. Nobody escapes this. Nobody escapes the trauma. So what happens in the body, in the mind, and the spirit during trauma? Let's take an event that is experienced for the individual as traumatic. What happens is that the first place that we experience that is in the nervous system. We, as human beings, are an amazing nervous system. underneath all of our flesh and bones and fascia. As we go down, we go to the nervous system. And the nervous system is highly attuned to provide feedback for surviving or thriving. And due to the nature of trauma, the nervous system responds by creating patterns of fight or flight, patterns that are held deeply within the nervous system that are intended to protect us from further harm. So the nervous system's job in this case is to protect us from future harm. It becomes an information operating system. So the trauma then sends the message to the nervous system that this situation, these people, these circumstances are unsafe for you to continue in your natural state of healing and wholeness and vitality. Well, without jumping too far, how is that experienced for us as we get older in our everyday lives is as what? Anxiety and depression, all sorts of mental health issues, all sorts of physical issues. And if you look, we think that cancer, heart disease, and strokes are the #1 killers of people. Actually, what we see is that what causes so many of those is the underlying stress mechanisms, which are held in the nervous system, which are due to the trauma. So I want you to understand the sequence of this. So then stress, which is the response of the trauma, which is the response of the nervous system being deeply wired to protect us, remains in the unconscious. So a child plays with a dog and the dog bites them. That child will remember that not only in their memory, in their emotions, but the place that they're going to remember it most will be in their body. Their body, as Bessel van der Kolk says, the body keeps a score. The body will remember this experience, and maybe not in the visual memory, possibly. It depends on the age of the child or the circumstances, but the body will keep it, even if the mind does not hold on to it. So what does that tell us? It tells us that by understanding how the body keeps the score and understanding how to decode the messages of the body, we have direct access to healing. Therapy without the body is not integrative. Therapy in the mind does not heal the body. The body heals the mind. So then from the nervous system, connected deeply within the brain, is continuing an ongoing dialogue that the more trauma we have, the more we live on an alert state of being. We're looking unconsciously for things to go wrong, to not go well, to be in danger. And we don't have to go far to experience this. You can tap into paying attention to your body from your toes to your head and seeing that if we just turn our attention inwards, we can see that we carry stress. And let's go from the outwards inwards. We notice that we carry muscular tension. That's the first place we can recognize that. We can see we have a tightness here, we have a tightness there. We wonder, like, is that a sports injury? What we notice is that the dense muscle tissue, it causes causes us to feel the contraction in the muscle from the nervous system saying, I'm still holding on to this memory and pattern. A child that maybe, let's say, screamed at by their parent, and they flinch a certain way. And in that flinching, in that one time that they flinched, that flinching becomes embedded in the body. And that child may have that same movement under moments of duress and then under moments where nothing is seemingly going on externally, but the nervous system is somehow still flickering that it's dangerous. And then this child becomes an adult and they're noticing all of a sudden they're with someone and they flinch a certain way and they become curious about this. And that's the beginning of going into the body and working on the deeper layers. So then we go from the muscle layer. What's the next layer down that we see the impact of the trauma? The fascia. The fascia is an amazing system. The fascia is the watery like web that lines your entire body, and it's the interface between the nervous system and the muscles. And we see that the fascia under trauma becomes tense. And as it becomes tense, it becomes rigid in our expression in the body. We can see it in the way a person holds their face, in the way that the person moves, in the way that they walk their gait, in the way that they blink, in the way that they would look at us. The fascia then is like the landscape that basically is like a painting of what happened and what's actually happening. And then we get to the nervous system. So trauma starts from the nervous system, going all the way up to the density of the body and manifests itself in our expression in life. What do we all want in life? What are we all here for? What are we all seeking? We have to talk about this to understand the impact of meditation and somatic healing and trauma. We all want to feel whole. Maybe another word for that is a sense of fullness and vitality, a quality of spaciousness and presence. If you can ask people what they want, if they knew how to describe that, they would use those words. Happiness is simply a pseudonym for those experiences. And people are not really looking for fleeting happiness. Even though you might say to someone, what do you want? Oh, happiness of getting this, and it's not that. At the end of the day, all of us, by the time we've grown up, we realize that happiness will not happen in some kind of conditional fleeting experience. What we want is a state of being, and not a momentary passing experience. So in order to experience that state of being, we need to feel integrated internally, whole internally. Well, what does trauma do? Trauma creates splintering. Trauma creates fracturing. Trauma creates leaving that space of feeling whole. We do that to meet the environment that we feel that trauma in. We meet that environment. Why do we meet that environment? Because we experience that we don't feel safe within our own wholeness, that being at home within the body, within the psyche, within the soul is somehow not safe. The child doesn't do this on a cognitive level. They do this on a very deep, subtle, energetic level. And what happens then? We develop a mask, a persona, a mechanism, an archetype that has to go out and massage and deal with the people and the circumstances to be loved and to be safe, but at a price. And the price is leaving our universal, divine consciousness, that state of utter freedom. And why is it that as adults we seek so many experiences, from psychedelic drugs to jumping off of cliffs to doing things that bring us close to letting go? Take a look in each one of our lives. What do we do unconsciously often to feel the unburdening of the influence of the trauma? We're doing it all the time, from small things to big things. And what do we realize? We realize that in those moments, we experience something like what I call a facsimile of wholeness. It's not the actual experience. It's a mimicking of that experience. But it's understandable, because where in our Western life are we taught that we are also embodied beings? We walk around as we are a mind. We are a mind, that we are a thinking creature. If you didn't have a body, you wouldn't be thinking. So therefore, we are embodied beings which use thinking, emoting, and sensing to express the embodiment. It's very important to understand that. And when healing happens and integration happens, thinking, feeling, and sensing do not get in the way and disturb our well-being. We feel free of the confines of thinking, feeling, and sensing. When trauma happens, we split away from the body. We move into thinking and emotions. And how often do you hear people say, I'm so sick and tired of these emotions, my ups and downs. I'm so sick and tired of my mind racing, and my mind just doesn't shut off. And what do? We try to offer support and healing in the mind and in emotions, but we forget that the mind and emotions are coming out of the injury in the body. And when healing happens in the body, emotions and thinking quiet down all by themselves. People are often shocked when I introduce them to breath work. They're shocked that by simply breathing mindfully and fully into the whole body, that they actually experience more spaciousness. Thoughts seem to lose their energetic power. Emotions seem to settle out. So the somatic healing must begin with the breath. Why? Why the breath? When trauma happens, the nervous system and breathing are the first impacts. Breath. When a child incurs a trauma, you notice that there's a clenching and a tightening immediately on the breath. This is a nervous response, and the breath is then held. I want you to try something here, just as an investigation, as you're listening to this. Without changing your breathing, go ahead and just close your eyes and pay attention to the quality of your breath. How long is it? How short is it? How deep? How shallow is it? Just go ahead and take a look. Notice. what you might notice is that your breathing is very shallow and usually held up in the top half of the chamber that's available for us to breathing. Most of us walk around breathing only 30 to 50% capacity of our lungs. I just want you to just reflect on that for a second and look at the relationship between trauma, the impact on breathing, the importance of breath work, meditation, and so forth, which we'll talk about. So now the breath gets contracted, it becomes shallow. So then what happens to the nervous system? The nervous system and breathing are intertwined. Therefore, when we are breathing in a shallow way, and you might not even perceive it that it's shallow because you may be breathing this way your entire life, but it's shallow, and you'll see it when we do the first, breath practice like we did. So therefore, by breathing shallow, we are telling the nervous system that we are in fight or flight. And you might be thinking, I'm not in fight or flight. Not to the degree that you might be thinking someone in active trauma is, but we are in fight or flight on the most subtle, and maybe not so subtle levels, which is if you tune in, you might experience that you may be living life at a constant state of agitation, unsettledness. Those are the key characteristics that the nervous system is on. I was driving the car last week, and I was surprised to find that my hands were gripping onto the steering wheel with more pressure and tension than I was aware of before. I was in a rush to get home, and that rush translated as a gripping of the steering wheel. I became mindful of that, worked within the subtle energy, released it, and relaxed. But if I didn't pay attention to that, what's the impact of that? We might say, no big deal, you were slightly tense. No. Each moment, each hour, each year of unconscious impact on the nervous system creates a cascade of chemicals that run through our body that slowly create inflammation, deterioration, early aging, and chronic disease. Trauma, lack of breathing, somatic healing is the source of our suffering. In the 1950s, 1960s, when yoga started to come into the West, we had a profound movement that looked at these practices from the East. And we became curious about how to apply them to our Western life. Yoga and Buddhism in the early days were the two big influences, and what they carried with them was a deep meditative and somatic breathwork approaches to healing for over 2,500 years, and in China for 5,000 years. So it's been well known. It was new to us. And in the work of yoga, the first introduction to yoga is the breath work. So I'd like for you to put one hand on your heart area and one hand on your belly. And we're going to learn what's called full yogic breath, or in Western parlance, 3-part breathing. But it's simply the following. When you breathe in, the lower hand should rise first and feel like it's filling up what we would call the belly. But it's not that you're filling up the belly with air. What you're doing is you're experiencing that the diaphragm is dropping down further into your abdomen and pushing down your internal organs. This is a very healthy process. By bringing the breath all the way down, a few things happen. One, by pressing the organs down, we're actually creating an internal massage on the fascia, internal organs, the nervous system, and we're bringing oxygenation into the system. By breathing all the way down, you now are getting 80, 90% full on breath. Then as you inhale into the bottom, that will rise first, and then the hand on your chest will rise. So it'll go, it's almost like the filling of the cup from the bottom up, right? And then just a natural release through the nose. And again, even parts in, even part out. Keep your eyes closed on this. We're just going to do it for 30 seconds. Full breath in. Full breath out. Deep all the way down into the belly. And experience that with each full breath as you inhale in. Notice that with that breath, you actually can experience your whole body. The full breath opens the door on our full embodiment as human beings. You actually can feel that you have a body, you have feet, you have hands, and everything in between. Full breath in, full breath out. We can add a nice word, a couple of words to our breath. So breathing in, repeat the word peace to yourself. On the out breath, repeat to yourself, letting go. Peace. Letting go. Peace. Letting go. Good. And now just relax and notice how you feel. Notice that the emotions and thoughts seem less dense, less intense, less energized. That's what's called three-part or full yogic breathing. I'd like to introduce you to the next breathing exercise. And this is what I call the full body breathing, or what we would call in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, pervasive breath. So when we're breathing, we kind of have a sense that we're just breathing in our lungs. But I'm going to introduce you to feeling that you're breathing inside the entire body, from your toes to your head. And I want you just to notice that when you close your eyes, you don't see your body with your visual eyes, but you can experience your body as an energetic outline around you. And I want you to notice that that energetic outline of your body is actually porous. And imagine that the whole body is breathing in and out, breathing universal energy from the out and then releasing out into universal energy, that there's actually no barrier between the body and the outside environment, porous. Close your eyes and breathe with your whole body. Just for like 30 seconds, breathe with the whole body. And notice that You're not breathing with your mind. You're not breathing and looking at your body through your mind. As you're breathing, bring your attention and feel that you are everywhere in your body. Thinking is still going on, but you're not your thinking. Emotions are going on, but you're not your emotions. Sensations are going on, but you're not your sensations. You're fully in the body. Feeling the release and untangling with our experience. And as you continue doing this breathing, imagine that you're stepping back away from all of the conditioning of your life. It's like you take it and bundle it up with your hands and just leave it outside of you. And just feel the experience just for a moment of being free of the burden of our trauma and our conditioning. Great. So these two exercises, and there's more. There's a particular one called alternate nostril breathing and 9 breathings. A little bit more technical. I will add some links for those, and that you can have a nice toolkit of 4 methods that you can work with people. Depending on what's going on with them, you will choose based on what's happening, which method is needed for a person. So let's go back to body armoring and how do we recognize that body armoring? There was an amazing book by Dr. Hendricks, who wrote a book at the speed of life, I think it's called. And he talked about how to recognize and use the contractions in the body as a doorway to healing. And he described them as what he called movement flags, body flags, somatic flags. So what are some of these flags? Some of these flags include the way a person walks, the way a person moves, the way the person gestures, the way the person breathes, the way the person looks, the way the person speaks in terms of their volume, intensity. All of these are habitual flags showing themselves up to us. What do we do with those? Those flags are invitations to help people go into the spaces of unconscious. What keeps the body in its trauma state is that we had to cut off the trauma, the emotions, the thoughts. We have to cut that all off and put that away somewhere because it's too unbearable. So what does that create? A split, right? Well, that split never goes away, meaning that the material that's put in the unconscious stays there, but it's not just dormant and silent. It's actually perfuming constantly in our life. So if I have a closet and I left some food in there that was, rotten, it's going to smell throughout my whole house eventually. Even if the food maybe goes away at some point, the smell may linger in the walls, in the clothing. There'll be some kind of remnant of that. Well, the body shows that remnant. And what do we often call those? Contractions, restrictions, stuckness. We often hear people say, I feel stuck. I feel contracted. Oh, I feel resistance. All those terms simply mean that there's unconscious material that hasn't been processed yet and brought to the light of awareness for healing. So we use these flags to bring attention to that material And then we start to work with that material through meditation and somatic approaches like the breathing approaches, and then movement experiences, yoga and so forth, Tai Chi, Qigong maybe. And then as we make access to material, we bring it up and let it come out. And as it comes out, we help the person make sense of it and to start to put things together. I want to say something very important here. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've been a psychotherapist for 30 years. When people come to me, they think that there's a lot of things going on with them. No, it's actually one thing that's going on with them. It's not many things. And usually within a session or two, I'm able to help a client identify what is that one core process that's showing up in all of these discrete ways. So let me explain what I mean by that. What's the one thing that I'm referring to? It's the impact of the trauma on feeling that I'm separate from my wholeness. That's the one thing. When we are separated from our wholeness, our fullness, our spaciousness, our presence, our vitality, we don't feel well. And it shows in our life through these constrictions, through these resistances. And then in our relationships with people, in our jobs, all of those things that a client thinks like, oh, I've got this going on, I've got this. No, it's one theme manifesting itself everywhere in life as one theme. And by helping the client see that it's a theme, then we can start to resolve what is driving the theme. What's driving the theme? A deeply held belief that something is wrong with me. I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough. And it doesn't matter what's the after the I'm not good enough, but it's that feeling that I'm lacking something. Well, how does trauma do that? Trauma for the child, often the trauma is experienced as it was my doing, maybe it was my fault. Because remember, the unconsciousness in the child cannot make that the parent is the problem, maybe for some children at some point later. But initially, the child has to keep the parent, sort of say, outside of that because they're the caretaker. So the child has to make themselves the object that there's something wrong with them. Then that something wrong with me shows up in the body and shows up in all of these other ways in our life. So therefore, we need to heal that there's something wrong with me. How do we do that again? Breath work, meditation, and then also EMDR, for those of you that are familiar with that. I use EMDR with everybody. It's an amazing somatic system. EMDR is powerful. I integrate EMDR, meditation, and breath work all in one. And it all happens in one session fluidly without, just discrete pockets. So let's talk a little bit about meditation here. Meditation is greatly misunderstood in the West. Meditation is new to us. It only came to us, in the last 50 years, maybe a little bit more, from the East again. And when it came from the East, it was interpreted by many Westerners, and there was a lot of misinterpretation on some levels. And then we learned meditation in the West outside of a system that was holistic and using meditation as a way to embody our wholeness. In the West, we took meditation, like many of the other yogic practices, as just a methodology by itself, not within the context of a much larger healing. I really want to make sure that we understand that meditation is not just a technique. It's not. It's a group of practices that belongs within a context of understanding the mind and the body and the soul. Meditation practices are to heal the splintering of trauma. There are many, many, many types of meditation. So let me describe to you the mechanism of what happens in the psyche and how meditation actually influences that. So a little bit of object relations theory and a little bit of Eastern philosophy just for a few minutes here. At every moment of our life, we experience that there's a me as the observer and the objects of my consciousness. For example, I'm observing my thoughts, I'm observing my emotions, I'm observing my sensations. So we have this sense that I, the subject, and the objects of experience, the subject object, are basically intertwined. We often say, I'm thinking, I am feeling. And what happens is the moment we say, I am feeling, I am thinking, whatever the thought is, whatever the emotion is, we become identified as that we are that. Not that we are experiencing the impact of that, but we identify that my identity is my thinking, my identity is my emotions. And what happens with that over-identification, we lose sight of who we are fundamentally. So the first stage of meditation is the process by which we slowly just move our attention back away from the objects of our experience by breathing and by what we call mindfulness practices. Now I'll introduce you to one or two very simple ones. We start to feel like, wait a second, I am not my thoughts. I am not my emotions. Oh, what a relief. There's such a relief there for a moment that right. And the moment we move away and become disentangled from our experience, we start to realize I am not my experience. And all of a sudden, the energy starts to calm down. And what do we experience in that calming down? Our fullness, our wholeness, spaciousness, and presence of vitality. So the process is all about letting go. All we're doing in therapy, in our healing practices, simply identify the way we've been conditioned, and then let go. Identify ways we've been conditioned and let go. Over and over again, let go, let go, let go. That is all that we're doing. So, meditation. I've been practicing meditation since I've been a teenager and trained by amazing teachers. And currently, my teachers are just deepening this practice in my entire life. So let me introduce you to some basic meditation practices. So the first one is simply being aware of your breath and bringing your attention to your breathing and keeping our attention on the breath. This is called one-pointed or mindful breath work, right? So go ahead and close your eyes for me. And without changing your breath, without doing anything special, simply pay attention to the breath coming into the body. And then pay attention to the breath coming out of the body. We're going to do that for like 30 seconds. Be aware of the breath in. Be aware of the breath out. Breath in. Breath out. Keep your attention on the breath. Good. And relax and open your eyes. And what you'll notice is that it's not so easy to keep just for 30 seconds our attention on this one object, if you want to call the breath. Our minds do a lot of thinking, our emotions are moving all around, our experience is just floating. And we often say, oh, I can't meditate, I can't do this. No, it's that in order to tame a wild horse, like a stallion, it takes a long time to keep gently, no, stay here. Stay here, stay here. It takes a long time to train. And by doing this mindfulness breathing, you start to experience like you're stepping back away from our conditional story. Now, what does trauma do? Trauma makes the intensity so large that for many people, meditation practice can be very intense. So what do? Simply the initial phases are doing the breath work and mindfulness practice. And what will happen is the person will start to get in touch with the material, and then things will start to come up. And this is where, as the therapist, we watch and we adjust how much breath work, how much mindfulness, when does the EMDR come into place, when do we shift into enactment and other somatic practices. So we stay attuned so the person doesn't become overwhelmed even in the healing process. I have people who, when they start just to breathe consciously, get overwhelmed. It's because so much material is blocked up and hasn't been accessed, that it's too much of a flood work. So what do? For that, we do what's called grounding meditation. Let's say you have a client who's very emotionally agitated and stirred up. It's a very nice exercise. So everybody just close your eyes. And I want you to feel your feet touching the earth or the floor, wherever you may be. And I want you to really experience that. Go ahead, bring all of your attention, your awareness to your feet making deep contact with the earth. And then bring your breath and awareness into your feet. You're now aware in your feet. And feel that your feet are making deep contact into the earth, very deep into the earth. And as you breathe in, you're going to breathe in this earthy quality, this sense of groundedness and belonging up into your body. Feel that this energy of support and ground is coming upwards through your ankles, through your knees, up into the belly, through the chest, neck, head, and arms. And your whole body is rooted deeply into the earth. And the emotions and thoughts settle down. Go ahead and open your eyes. So there are many, many more meditation practices. It would require hours of a whole course. I teach an 8-week course to people on meditation practice. So at this point, I would just like to just maybe pause for a moment here and entertain some questions to see where we are.
Excellent, thank you. Does anyone in the audience watching right now have any questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat. And while you're writing that, I do have some that came in a little earlier. So one question is, how will providers adjust their approach to meditation with individuals who have aphantasia? Are you familiar with aphantasia?
Don't know the term actually.
It's, I looked it up earlier. I wasn't familiar myself, so I Googled it. And according to Google, aphantasia is the inability to visualize mental images. So if someone's unable to visualize something mentally, are there ways that they can still meditate?
Meditation has nothing to do with visualization practice. Meditation is the process of observing. For example, if you observe your arm moving, you're not having to visualize anything, right? If you close your eyes and you pay attention to the movement of your arm, there's no need to visualize. It's a way of, an experience of sensing, what's called a felt sense. What we're helping clients do is we're not looking for new visualizations as a way to somehow, overlay older processes. No, what we're doing is we're tuning to another way of knowing, an intuitive way of knowing and perceiving that can see through thinking, that can see through the density of thought and imagery. So it's completely unnecessary for visualization practice. There is a branch of meditation that involves visualization or creative visualization. That's not what I'm speaking about here. I'm talking about a very deep level of knowing that's making contact with who you fundamentally are. And who you fundamentally are is not going to be perceived in the image form. It'll be perceived in a deeply felt experience of wholeness.
Excellent. That makes sense. Thank you. Another question I had seen earlier was, how do you help clients who might be resistant to meditation get started? A lot of times people have sort of these concepts of what meditation is. How do you, and they might feel like it's inaccessible or too hard for them. How do you help someone who's a beginner get started?
Well, first of all, the person who's going to get them started in it must be well trained and have had spent time themselves doing that. I mean, because if the clinician is not well versed, and I don't mean that they took one course, for a little short time. I'm talking about that if they're going to introduce meditation, and if it's not well steeped within them, then it becomes some kind of method that may seem gimmicky, and then the client won't connect to that. The meditation is not just a method. The meditation is a way of being. So if the clinician understands that and has worked with meditation as a methodology and a way of being within themselves, then when they're introducing that to someone, they're saying, they're going to talk about wholeness and fullness, because that person, that's what they're seeking. And then when we talk about meditation to them, one, we're going to have to probably go through a process of destigmatizing what's out in the general public, which is completely incorrect, and through our own understanding and our own depth, and with our teachers and our guides, be able to simply say to a person, pay attention to your breath. Wow, well, that's meditation. So what happened? I have seen people come to me with resistance and misunderstanding meditation, and within the first session, they're like, I want to do this all the time, because they don't see it as, oh, I'm going to sit down, cross my legs over, and sit for 20 minutes and try to empty my mind. I want to tell you, the most common misperception in the whole Western Hemisphere is that meditation is about emptying the mind. No, that's not true. We're not emptying thinking. You can't empty thinking, otherwise you'll be dead. You're going to think for the rest of your life. What we're doing is we're making access with a way of knowing that has nothing to do with thinking. It's a perception. It's a perceptual experience that is not thought-based. And then we can introduce that to our clients. So it really begins with the clinician.
Excellent. Thank you. Looks like we don't have any more questions right now, but if people are watching this on the replay, they might comment them, and we'll make sure that you see those so that you can reply. I know you've got a meditation retreat coming up in April. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and how people can get in touch to learn more?
Retreat. Where's the retreat? I'm trying to wonder. Which retreat? You mean
the one on your website, journeytowholeness.health, April.
Well, it's not a retreat. I think I don't know where that
apologies if I misspoke. How would you?
I'm laughing. No, it's funny. It's so what I just finished in the fall. I finished an 8-week course on meditation. Then I did an 8-week course on a particular kind of yoga for healing. And then I just finished another what's called an embodied meditation course. So what I do is periodically I teach these meditation courses and somatic embodiment courses. And I teach them in 8-week cycles. So, and then at some point in the summertime, I might do a retreat either in the States or here in Europe for people to come and experience a full week-long immersion into the practices.
Excellent. So to find that, where would we send people?
I would say, I'd say my website is really the best contact to make. And then if they sign up with the newsletter, they can send me an email, or, and you're more than welcome to please give them my email as well. Anybody can contact me. I have no problem.
Great. We'll make sure to include the website and your email in the show notes. Any other closing remarks?
We all have the capacity to live full, vibrant lives.
I love that. Well, Alex, absolutely. Alex, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experience with us and creating this space for everyone to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And to everyone watching, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you got something out of this and were able to practice the exercise. I know I got a lot of value out of it. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.